The department wasn't made aware that the homes had mica, and we believe that the solicitors acting on behalf of the council were also not made aware. Now, the facts are, if that's proven in a tribunal or at a criminal investigation, then someone has to answer. Someone's head has to be on a block. In my opinion, and I've always said it, the only way to force the Irish government to do the right thing is in the courts. Now, the first test case will be my father's High Court case for what has happened to his property. And that test case will allow everybody else, if it's successful, and in my opinion it will be successful, it will set a precedent and a domino effect that will allow multiple cases to be taken in the High Court. Now, if that does happen, in my opinion, the government will be forced to hold the public inquiry, but also to give people 100% redress. Via justia ruat caelum. Let justice be done till the heavens fall. By God, by the time I'm finished with this, the heavens will fall.
You're very welcome to today's episode of The State We're In. And by the time you finish watching today's programme, you'll be forgiven for thinking that the country is in a terrible state. My guest today is Cllr Frank McBrearty from County Donegal. Frank, you're very welcome to The State We're In.
Well, thank you, Anna, for inviting me on today.
For our younger viewers who have never heard of the Morris Tribunal, can you tell us briefly about it?
Well, in 1996, actually December 4th, 1996, I was arrested for a crime that didn't actually happen, along with 13 members of my family. And what subsequently happened out of that over the years and months and period ahead, the Morris Tribunal was established from the lobbying that we did to get to the bottom of why we were wrongfully accused of a crime that didn't actually happen. And it led to the establishment of what's now known as the Morris Tribunal. And I think everybody at this stage would know a good bit about the Morris Tribunal. But what people forget, we had 67 High Court cases settled in the High Court for what actually happened to us at the hands of An Garda Síochána, but we actually sued the Irish state for it. So most people can actually go on and download the Morris Tribunal reports online. Some good reading on it, and it's very educational, and it actually gives you a good insight to what we actually went through.
Right. So now you are embarking on a second case against the state. We've all heard so much about the mica issue in Donegal, and I believe that it affects you personally and your family. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, members, my father, myself, and members of my family and wider family circle and friends and people who I represent in my own constituency of East Donegal, which is known as Lifford and Stenarder MD, we've all bought from the same manufacturer that is at the centre of the allegations concerning the mica scandal. And recently, my father and my cousin, Breeze McConnell, who's married to Dermot Farrell, who's a native of County Galway, they had their homes tested. And their problem is not just mica. Their test results have shown up sulfide minerals, which are more dangerous than actual mica. Sulfide minerals such as pyrrhotite, minor pyrite, and chalcopyrite, and others. And the government never took this into the equation when they established what's now known as the Irish Standard IS 465, which was created by the National Authority Standards of Ireland in a technical committee set up by them, which resulted in the establishment pass-through law, which is now known as IS 465. And that IS 465 is actually a flawed standard because of these sulfide minerals not being included in it. So there's many unanswered questions why the government deliberately, in my opinion, set up this standard in the first place and didn't include didn't include all the deleterious materials, all sulfide minerals, and didn't establish what they should have established, which is a peer review study into the whole issue.
And I suppose there are clues to what is about to happen in Donegal from what has happened in the States and Canada. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, in the state of Connecticut and the state of Massachusetts and Maurice in Quebec, they discovered pyrrhotite in their foundations, and thousands of properties were affected by it. There was actually a campaign group established in Connecticut called the Concrete Queens that actually helped to lobby and expose the failures of the industry in the US. And in Canada itself, they actually did research into pyrrhotite. I believe Toronto University has done extensive research on sulfide minerals that are in concrete that caused the foundations to collapse in Canada. So what do you call? We, as a member of the European Union, we should now, as a union, as a European Union, together, we should now establish a peer review study to look at what is happening in Donegal and other parts of Ireland now.
Well, you know, personally, from looking at TV footage of what's happening in Donegal, I'd be forgiven for thinking that it is confined just to people's houses. But in fact, from chatting to you earlier, the problem is much more extensive.
Well, Donegal, I believe, is unique compared to the rest of the counties because we have sulfide minerals along with mica. And some homes in Donegal are also showing levels of mica and pyrite. But the other counties that are now coming forward, like Mayo Mayo's actually in the scheme. Mayo is a pyrite issue. But these other counties are coming that are now highlighting problems in their counties. It seems to be pyrite as well. But it all goes back to the fact that we don't have no peer review study. We have Dr. Robbie Goodhue of Trinity, who has been trying to get funding to do a peer review study, but the government hasn't been listening to him.
And can you tell me, please, then, the effects that these minerals have on structures that have been built using this material?
Well, basically, in layman terms, and it's too hard to explain from an engineering point of view, the home crumbles over a certain period of time, and then the home becomes inhabitable. And it can take up to 25 years for that to happen. But at the end result is that the home must be demolished, or you leave the home and move into a new home. It's either or. And this is what Dr. Ambrose McCluskey, who has commentated on this on the Matt Cooper show and in local media and national media, that the actual standard that was created by the National Authority Standard of Ireland is not fit for purpose, and that the current scheme is unworkable due to the fact that engineers can't indemnify these properties for remedial works only. They only can indemnify these properties if demolition and rebuild is undertook within the scheme, and that's not happening.
Now, my understanding is that only people's homes are covered by the scheme, but there are other buildings affected too. Tell me, how extensive is the problem?
Well, the scheme was set up to basically remedial works only, which means outer leaf block relief, and there's 5 options, 1 to 5, and basically number 2, 3, 4, and 5 is remedial works only. But the issue here is that it's not just primary residents. That's what the scheme is for, primary residents, homeowners, as they say in Donegal. It's all properties that have been built by manufacturers that have used these aggregates, deleterious materials, and other sulfide minerals in the concrete in Donegal. And that's, in my opinion, unconstitutional, because we have equal rights under Article 40 in the Constitution. And for example, a home is 10,000 square feet and a home is 1,000 square feet. Under the Constitution, they should have the same rights. But under the scheme, they don't have the same rights. Because, to explain it briefly, you really only get about 196,000 or 197,000 in the scheme itself if you apply through the scheme for grant assistance. Well, the vast majority of homes, on an average, is going to cost anything between 400 and 500,000 euro because of the current climate and the rises in costs in building a home. And these families in particular cannot raise 200,000 and 300,000 on top of what they get in the scheme. And in my opinion, that's unconstitutional. But for somebody who has a house that's 5,000, 6,000, up to 10,000 square feet, they can't really go into the scheme because €200,000 will not cover a house that costs maybe $1 million to 1.5 million to rebuild. So there's so many issues that are unresolved, and it's all down to the government's agenda to continue with what I call their cover-up, because the bottom line here is that this is going to cost the Irish taxpayers a huge amount of money, but the people in Donegal and Mayo and other parts of the country, it's not their fault, so they shouldn't have to pay for it. It's government that's to blame for this. The lack of legislation, the lack of policing the industry itself, due to self-regulation, is to blame for the problem. And so the government needs to stand up and be accountable to the people that are living in these homes that are crumbling and these properties that are crumbling due to no fault of their own.
Now, when you talk about these properties, can you expand that a little bit further? So are you telling me that the problem goes beyond people's homes?
Yes, well, what do you call it? Primary residence means homeowner. Well, property owners means agriculture sheds, garages that are not included in the scheme. So if your house and your garage has also got mica, your garage is not covered. Leisure centres run by local authorities, public service centres, care homes, GPs, offices and surgeries. The list is ever ending. It's apartments, holiday homes, second homes, investment properties. It's a never-ending story. It's et cetera, is the word you would use. And the problem is the government hasn't actually looked at the fact that the problem is far worse than just primary residence.
So are you telling me that infrastructure like bridges and so on could be affected by this?
Well, the facts are that sulfide minerals are showing up in concrete blocks. So that means that it definitely must be in concrete foundations, concrete bridges, concrete culverts for storm drainage, footpaths, all the types of infrastructure that is in each county in Ireland that have used these aggregates must be tested, and they must be tested under health and safety, in my opinion.
So we're getting a completely different picture now from you than what we have been fed by mainstream media. And it just strikes me that it's almost like the equivalent of a natural disaster in slow motion.
Well, it's a human tragedy. And I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying The Hague should prosecute for crimes against humanity, but it's almost there in that context as far as I'm concerned, because these are people's homes, these are people's assets, and then on top of that, then property owners, it's their livelihoods, it's their assets, and it's the small medium enterprises right across this country are what keep communities alive. Well, they're facing into the abyss because of failure of government to deal with this problem properly.
Okay, so if I can take you up on that point, you have received a major tranche of documentation under freedom of information relating to the goings on in Donegal County Council. Tell me about it.
Well, Cllr McBrearty of the Inish Times newspaper and Donegal Live digital platform wrote a story back about three months ago about 5 homes in Inishowen and Buncrana, bought by Donegal Co Council. They were actually leased on a 10-year leasing scheme from the council, but they bought these homes knowing that they had mica. Now, I started asking questions when I read this story, because nobody else seemed to be asking the questions they should have been asking, and I was getting nowhere and I was getting no answers. Now, what I was asking, I was entitled to know as a member of local government. But then I decided I'll do an FOI request on this. Now, it took me up to now to expose what's in that file, and it's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. Now, the only way I can describe it is corruption. What does it actually mean? It means, in my opinion, it means that the organisation, Donegal County Council, has failed in what they should be doing and in the process of what their job actually is. And the issue needs to be looked at in a public inquiry. All acquisitions of homes that have been bought now by Donegal County Council, in my opinion, should now be investigated by a public inquiry. And that's the only way we're going to get to the bottom of why Donegal County Council actually bought these 5 houses with mica, which they shouldn't have bought, because they paid €600,000 for them, and they're actually only valued at site value, which in my opinion would be about 100,000 for the 5 houses.
Okay, so just for me to unpack what you're saying there so that I can have a clearer understanding of what you're telling me. You're saying that Donegal County Council knowingly bought 5 houses that were affected by mica, paid 600,000 for it. But surely that can't be the case.
Well, you see, there's a lot of unanswered questions in this case of the 5 homes in Buncrana. And primarily, from information that we got from the department, from questions from Cllr McBrearty, who did the story on it, and I would advise people to read Catherine's story online on my Facebook page and on Donegal Live. It'll give them a better understanding of what actually happened here in Donegal with those 5 homes. But the department wasn't made aware that the homes had mica, and we believe that the solicitors acting on behalf of the council were also not made aware. Now, the facts are, if that's proven in a tribunal or at a criminal investigation, then someone has to answer. Someone's head has to be on a block, and someone has to answer for what has actually happened with 600,000 of taxpayers' money being wasted, in my opinion. On top of that, then €82,000 given by the department to do repair works. And the fact is that these homes weren't properly investigated. What actually was in these homes? They only did a small investigation by Fastnet Analytical, who only do one test, and that's to indicate if the houses have mica or not. And they only did one test on one of the 5 houses. And I think that that's totally unacceptable. And Donegal County Council knew this even before they actually bought these properties, from test results from Fastnet Analytical, that these houses had 18% mica in them.
So what you're telling me is that the fact that officials in Donegal County Council knew about this issue and didn't reveal it to the solicitors, didn't reveal it to the Department of the Environment when they were drawing down the money for the houses, their knowledge of the issue has actually come to light in the documents that you have received under Freedom of Information. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, as a result of the investigations that I did into the file, I actually had to take that file completely apart and put it in chronological order by date. And when I say by date, I had to put it in chronological order by minute, by hour, by day, by month, and by year. It's actually now in 3 different files, 2019, 20, and 21. But I shouldn't have had to do that. This shouldn't have happened. And other members of Donegal County Council should have been asking the same questions that I have been asking. Now, on the 6th of October, in a full council meeting, I was actually expelled unlawfully by the current mayor, Jack Murray, for asking questions about these 5 homes. But 2 hours later, he had to reinstate me on legal advice from the council solicitors that it was unlawful what he actually did. So the question mark is, why are members of Donegal County Council not asking the same questions that I am asking, which we are entitled to do as members of local government? There's a huge question mark over here of accountability and transparency, and it's not in local government. And you would think with all the tribunals and inquiries like the Mahon and Moriarty Tribunal that these things wouldn't be happening in local government now today. And that's not the case, and that's not the reality we're living in.
Well, Frank, that is very, very worrying. On the one hand, you have told us about your own personal story of being affected by the mica issue, and you've given us an insight into the scale of the problem, which is really beyond comprehension. It's a story that we're not getting in mainstream media. And you have then finally given us an insight into what has been going on in Donegal County Council with the purchase of 5 houses for €600,000. Officials in the council, knowing that they were affected by mica, but withholding that information from the council solicitors and from the Department of Environment when they were drawing down the money.
It was actually the Department of Housing.
Sorry, the Department of Housing. So, just to finish,
the most devastating part of this, as a member of local government, is that the members of Donegal County Council for a year and a half were not told that these properties had mica. And the dogs in the street, by some commentators, that's the words that's been used. The dogs in the street in Buncrana knew that these homes had mica. So why did the Donegal County Council officials not inform 9 members of the Inishowen MD and not inform the 37 members of Donegal County Council that these houses had mica? Now, the questions that need to be asked must be asked in a public inquiry stroke and tribunal of inquiry.
Okay, so to finish up then, Frank, what do you hope will happen now going forward?
Well, I hope that we begin the process of reform, because that's what's needed here. Secondly, I want to see a public inquiry into all aspects of the mica scandal, and these 5 houses are part of that scandal. Because without the public inquiry, we won't have findings and we won't have recommendations which will allow us to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And sadly, at the minute, it's not happening. Like, every story has a chapter, and in those chapters, and there's many chapters in this story to date, and similar to my own story, around the same chapter now and my own story, which led to a public inquiry. I think we're not very far away from the establishment of a public inquiry, which is inevitable in my opinion.
So there's 2 things that I just want to finish up with. The first is that we know from the history of public inquiries in Ireland that they really, I suppose, line the pockets of legal eagles and go nowhere sometimes. For example, I'm thinking of the Farley Commission of Inquiry that was established in 2016 to investigate the Grace case. It has cost over 7 million to date. It's still ongoing, and we are no further on in knowing what actually happened to Grace than we were in 2016. So there is that danger that if a tribunal of inquiry is established, it will go on indefinitely and it will take years to get to the truth of the matter. And the second point then is that we're talking about homeowners and property owners of farm buildings, nursing homes, hospitals, schools, etc. The compensation level involved runs to billions upon billions of euro. And should the taxpayer have to foot that bill? So there's kind of 2 issues there.
Well, first of all, it's ultimately going to be down to the taxpayer, but I'll agree to disagree with you about public inquiries. Your points are noted, and I agree with them, but I have to disagree with the fact that without a public inquiry, you can't get to the full truth. Secondly, what people don't understand about public inquiries is they're a fact-finding mission, and the terms of reference are very important, how that tribunal can conduct its work. Now, the Irish state are very good at creating terms of reference that are restricted so they can tell the story the way they want to tell it. But due to the experience that I have, if there's a public inquiry into the mica scandal, I will certainly not allow the government to put in the terms of reference and restrict it like they did in the Morris Tribunal and many other tribunals of inquiries in the history of this state. Now, the mothers and babies homes is an example of the way they restricted the terms of reference in it. And that's one of the tribunals of inquiries that people now have in their memory due to TV programs. But crimes against humanity is actually what should have happened there. But a tribunal of inquiry is the only way to get through the volume of paperwork. Now, I mean, the example I showed you today is in a small portion of the mica scandal, which is 5 homes, the amount of paperwork involved, 300 pages of documents in that file, 150 of them irrelevant and 150 relevant, is the type of work that you have to do to investigate, to get to the bottom of something, how it happened and why it happened. And the issue is that without a public inquiry and proper legal teams in that public inquiry, you will never get to the truth, and you'll never get recommendations, and you will never get findings that should be made in these types of scandals.
Right. A very, very good point. And the second point then, the issue of compensation.
Well, the ultimate goal here is for every homeowner and every property owner to have their properties rebuilt. And if there's mental health and physical problems on top of it, they'd be compensated for that. Now, in my opinion, and I've always said it, the only way to force the Irish government to do the right thing is in the courts. Now, the first test case will be my father's High Court case for what has happened to his property. And not only his property, his business, which he's now retired, his business is affected by his properties, and his business are also affected by this. And that test case will allow everybody else, if it's successful, and in my opinion it will be successful, it will set a precedent and a domino effect that will allow multiple cases to be taken in the High Court. Now, if that does happen, in my opinion, the government will be forced to hold the public inquiry, but also to give people 100% redress. And that's what people are looking for. They're looking for their rights as Irish citizens under the Constitution to equal rights under Article 40 of the Irish Constitution, which is enshrined in our Constitution. And our forefathers died for those rights, and those rights should be upheld.
Right, Frank. Very, very insightful, and we will watch this space. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me today. To those of you who have been watching, I just want to let you know that Compass Media is a new online news platform established by myself and Dr. Finbar Markey. We'll never ask you for money or contributions, but we do ask you please to go to our Facebook page, to subscribe to it, press the like button and the follow button. We're also on YouTube, and our website is mcompassmedia.com. And as you
can I say one thing? Via justia ruit caelum. It's a Latin proverb. Let justice be done though the heavens fall. And by God, by the time I'm finished with this, the heavens will fall.
On that note, we will finish. Please share. And until we meet again on the stage we're in, Bannocht de Arrive Cllr.